All right, Scott, as a political handler and advisor, what would have been the conversations going on between the PMO and the finance minister's camp leading up to tonight's announcement by Bill Morneau?
I think, given the way that tonight unfolded, we now know that the writing was on the wall for today's meeting. That today's meeting was going to be about the finance minister's departure. It wasn't going to be about how the finance minister was doing. It wasn't a test. It wasn't a situation where, well, if Bill sits down and says the right things, maybe we'll keep moving forward together. I think that that was done. I think that the past week in particular made it crystal clear that a change was going to occur. Finance ministers and prime ministers only have it's a binary choice. You're either working together or you're not working together. And when they parted in the past, it's been because they weren't on the same page. They were not working together. And so I think it was pretty clear that it was clumsy. To be blunt, my view is that this is a clumsy exit, but it was at minimum, I think, cleaner than it might have otherwise been. Because at least Morneau stood up there today and said, you know what, I'm leaving. I'm going to go do something else. I support the Prime Minister. He supports me. It's been a great 5 years. The end of August, in the middle of a controversy, is obviously the optimal time to leave, and it's only the most natural thing in the world. None of that passes muster, but it's cleaner than the alternative. It's cleaner than saying, I feel like I've been ill-used and I'm going to start throwing punches everywhere. Morneau did not do that. He took it on the chin, and now he'll be moving on to something else.
He insists he wasn't quit, to use that famous phrase. He was not quit. He said he resigned of his own accord.
Right. Yeah, he said that.
Right. Got it. And so he also needs the Prime Minister's support to seek the job in the OECD. He wants to be Secretary General. So would they have actually hammered out an agreement, Scott, to say that, look, if I do this, you'll need to help me out with this? I mean, is it that cut and dried? Is it that cutthroat?
Maybe we're boring people. Here's how I think the conversation went down. Over the course of the past week, the whole town is buzzing. Everyone who can buy a glass of beer is telling a reporter they hear this, they hear that. Mark Carney's coming in. No. It's going to be this person. It's that person. This was Chrystia Freeland. It's all done. No, he is staying. No, he isn't staying. All that stuff happens. It becomes an intolerable situation. It's obvious. It is plainly obvious that the Prime Minister and the PMO have different designs on what they want to do going forward, and those plans do not include Bill Morneau. And as a consequence, he said, you know what, it's going to be clumsy, but I'm going to say I'm resigning. I'm going to step down. One thing I have my eye on, maybe I'd like to take a run at the OECD. It's at minimum a good talking point for our late night press conference. You'll acknowledge that you're going to support my candidacy, which is a precondition to campaigning for the post. And so that's like, hey, easy, bargain, hands shaken, great, done. But, I actually think the most interesting aspect of this is what it means about what the Prime Minister is thinking about the future. It means that he wants to play some big cards. It means that he wants a new finance minister in place. It means that he has a point of view about what he wants to do in terms of handling this pandemic, how he wants to exert the role of government, how much money he wants to spend, what kind of programmatic designs he has in mind. That's what's going to get interesting. I think we're going to see a shuffle. I think we're going to see a throne speech. I think we're going to see a budget. I think we're going to see some action.
Did he have a choice, though, Scott? Because the wolves were baying at the door and somebody had to be sacrificed.
See, I think you're probably indirectly talking about we. My view is we didn't create this problem for Bill Morneau. It just made it worse. I think the reality is, and I don't wish to be unkind to the man on a day when his gravestone is being written. But I think the truth of the matter is that the government had made the decision that he was not going to be the finance minister to lead them into this next critical phase of how they were going to expend money, how they were going to design programs, how they were going to manage the pandemic world. I think there was a view that finance and the finance minister have not been as strong as they could have been or should have been over the course of the past number of months in managing the COVID world, and they wanted to make a change. And so I think we has complicated that. I think it made it worse but I don't think it created that sentiment.
You know, I'm curious, and maybe you can help me with the timeline, because I recall it was maybe 2 weeks ago, if not a little longer, that we first heard that Mark Carney was involved on an informal basis in advising the Prime Minister. But how long has that been in the works, and how much did that impact the decision for Bill Morneau to resign if it wasn't the We Charity scandal?
I love the way you asked me, how long has that been? How long has the Prime Minister and Mark Carney been talking together? Well, just hang on a second. I'll just look through my phone. I clearly have that information available to me at my fingertips. I'm just that kind of a absolutely ironclad insider. I have no idea. But I'm inclined to agree with Michelle, who spoke just a moment ago, suggesting that, Carney and the Prime Minister have probably talked. I mean, Mark Carney was the governor of the Bank of Canada. He was recruited to become, from that post, the governor of the Bank of England. This guy's an all-star player. We're going through a global economic crisis. You don't sit Bill Russell on the bench when the game is in play. So all that makes sense. If he's around and he has a telephone, I'd be calling him too. But I don't think he's going to be announced as the finance minister tomorrow. I don't think that he pushed out Bill Morneau. I don't think that Bill Morneau had to be pushed out. I think they're, relatively speaking, unrelated events. I think there was a sentiment at the center of the government, that in order to do the kinds of things the Prime Minister wants to do going forward, he needed a new finance minister.
Right.
And I think you get it. And obviously, he must get it now after the resignation.
Could Mark Carney have higher political aspirations than the finance minister's office?
You mean like the OECD Secretary General?
Maybe.
God, you're crafty. We'll see. Who knows? I don't know. I've worked with central bank governors, and I've worked with finance ministers, and I've worked with prime ministers. They're very different jobs, all of them. So beats the living hell out of me. But I would be willing to bet my eyeglasses that, which I can't see without, that Mark Carney will not be named finance minister in the next 24 hours. If I was going to bet, I'd say it's Chrystia Freeland. She ought to have been named, in my view, the finance minister after the last election. And I think that after some reflection, other people must obviously agree that somebody else should have been named finance minister. In any event, I bet that she's going to have that post after tomorrow.
Scott, what's the best way for the opposition to capitalize on this bombshell announcement tomorrow?
Well, I think they should do two things. One, they should pound away on the we stuff and say, there must be some grand mystery. But you always have to assume, if you're in the opposition, that if you insist that there's some grand secret at the center of all this, then you're victim to the circumstance if it turns out there isn't. And my guess is there isn't. So I'd pound away on that, I suppose, and we'll hear that, and we have heard that tonight. So they'll pound away on that and say this must be evidence that there was something more to it. But I think what they need to spend more time on is thinking about the future, because I come back to it. This is not an isolated event. This is the first in a series of moves that we're going to witness. The Prime Minister's moved out as finance minister. Why? Because he wants a new finance minister. Why? Because he believes that he needs a new agenda. He needs an agenda to deal with the economic and public health catastrophe going forward, and saying these are the policies we're going to pursue. He's going to put that in the throne speech. He's going to put that in a budget. It's going to be an off-ramp for an election at some point, this fall, next spring, whenever. And so if I was the opposition, I'd start thinking about how I want to play my cards in that dynamic. Because if their only answer is, you know what, we ought to be getting back to balancing the budget, they'll find themselves on the wrong end of the electorate.
Scott Reid, CTV News political commentator. Always good to have you on. Appreciate it.